Hello everyone and welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at Elden Ring in order to test how it runs on an older CPU that is below minimum specs, and we are going to see if we can optimize it to get the best performance possible without setting everything to low. We are also going to see how to unlock Elden Ring's frame rate, which is capped at 60 FPS on the PC. The game needs a beefy PC to run well. On the CPU side, the game requires at least an Intel Core i5-8400, which is a 6-core, 6-thread chip, or an AMD Ryzen 3 3300X, which is a 4-core, 8-thread chip. On the GPU side, the game requires a GTX 1060 3GB or an RX 580 4GB. For our test, we will be using a GTX 1060 6GB graphics card paired with an old Sandy Bridge Core i7 2600K CPU, which is a 2nd-gen 4-core 8-thread chip released back in 2011, and 16GB of DDR3 RAM clocked at 1866 MHz. Our 2600K is overclocked at 4.4 GHz, which is easily doable for all 2nd-gen i7s, with even a half-decent air cooler in order to give it a bit more muscle, and our GTX 1060 is also overclocked at plus 200 MHz for the core clock and plus 400 MHz for the memory clock using MSI Afterburner. If you want to know how to overclock your graphics card the easy way with MSI Afterburner, you can find a link to our GPU overclocking guide in the description below. So, let's start first by removing the 60 FPS cap. Thanks to the modding community, we have the Elden Ring Frame Rate Unlocker utility, which does exactly that. You can find a download link for the Elden Ring Frame Rate Unlocker utility as well in the description below. Before we run the Frame Rate Unlocker, we must first do an additional step. For AMD Radeon users, open Radeon settings, go to Gaming and find Elden Ring. If the game is not there, you can add it manually. Then click on Elden Ring and set Enhanced Sync to On. For NVIDIA users, open the NVIDIA control panel, go to Display and click 3D Settings, Manage 3D Settings, Program Setting, Elden Ring. Set Max Frame Rate and VSync to Off. Now save your settings and run the Elden Ring Frame Rate Unlocker utility. This utility patches the memory to unlock the frame rate, so it is highly recommended to run it only when playing offline with the Easy Anti-Cheat disabled. Tick the widescreen support checkbox and set the frame rate lock to match your monitor's refresh rate. Click Patch Game and that's it. The 60 FPS cap is removed. Now let's see if the good old Sandy Bridge 2600K can offer a good enough gaming experience in this demanding title. We'll start first with a low preset at 1080p. All settings are set to the lowest values except shadows, which has been set to high, simply because everything below that just doesn't look good. We are recording this video on the same PC with OBS Studio using the NVENC encoder, and the performance hit is around 3 to 5 FPS. Even at the lowest preset, the game runs below 60 FPS for the most part, with an average of 52 FPS and a few dips to the high 40s. And the same thing happens if we drop the resolution to 720p, which means that our overclocked Sandy Bridge simply cannot deliver a constant 60 FPS experience in this game, no matter how low you set the graphics settings. So far, this is the first time I've seen this happening. However, the game is perfectly playable and enjoyable. At 1440p, low preset, the game runs around 42 FPS with a few dips to the high 30s. Our GPU is fully utilized and the game is still quite playable. At 4K low preset, the game runs at around 24 FPS, which makes it borderline playable. Next, we'll test the game at maximum settings, starting with 1080p. The game runs at around 32 FPS, it looks good, and it still is very playable. Not too bad for the legendary 2600K. At 1440p maximum preset, the game runs between 24 to 27 FPS depending on the terrain and weather conditions. It looks great and it's still playable. At 4K maximum preset, the game looks absolutely stunning and it runs at around 16 FPS, making a bit more than a stunning slideshow. Still, I expected worse than that. I'm sure that with a GTX 1070 you can play this game in 4K maximum settings at 30 FPS even with an old Sandy Bridge. Next, we'll test the game at the settings I found to be the optimal balance between performance and graphical fidelity, and they are the following. These settings bring a very negligible 1 to 2 FPS impact on performance in relation to the low preset on all resolutions, while the game looks quite nice. At 1080p optimal settings, the game looks and runs great, and it offers a very playable and quite enjoyable experience. At 1440p optimal settings, the game looks great, runs well, and it offers a quite playable console-like experience. At 4K optimal settings, the game looks fantastic, but it's borderline playable and it offers more of a cinematic experience as well. So, in conclusion, can you play Elden Ring on a Core i7 2600K with a GTX 1060 6GB? Yes, you absolutely can. Even though you won't be able to get a constant 60 FPS with this processor, but the performance in 1080p is close enough that it doesn't really take away anything from the experience. Not bad at all for a chip that got released back in 2011. The good old Sandy Bridge, a true legend indeed. We'll soon make another video to see how a Ryzen 2700X handles Elden Ring with a GTX 1060, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Until then, take care and hope to see you in the next one. And as always, thanks for watching.